Welcome to the Athlete Mom Project. I'm Chandler, a mom who moved from Illinois to Colorado to embrace the mountains and motherhood. After a surprising journey to becoming a mom, I'm here to help you discover your strength, set big goals, and thrive in every phase of motherhood. I'm here to remind you that becoming a mom does not mean that you need to put your life on hold. If you're a mom who works out, guess what? You're an athlete. This channel is all about mountain living, strength training, endurance, nutrition, and most of all, balancing life as a busy mom. Movement is medicine, and I'm here to help you find joy in doing the things that you love again and in your body. Expect raw, real, and unedited content to motivate you through every phase of life. Let's climb this mountain together. Hey there, moms. This is Chandler with the Athlete Mom Project, and I'm here with special guest Erin today. She is a beautiful soul inside and out. She has three girls and does an amazing job. They're 17, 15, and 13. I think you'll find that we have conversations quite frequently in this space. I have a 2.5-year-old named Bodhi. So between the two of us, we're going to put together some stuff that might benefit you guys and everything in between. So today we hear progressive overload a lot in the gym and how it relates to we're building muscle and we're progressively overloading that stimulus. And today, Erin is known as the mindset master. She's helped me just in my own life and has been a special part of that piece for me, especially in the postpartum era, between the 0 to 2 years with Bodhi for me. And so we're going to dive into progressive overload and what that actually looks like in life and in motherhood. And since she's so great at reframing things with mindset, we're going to kind of dive into what progressive overload looks like, in motherhood. So I want to introduce Erin today, and she's going to talk a little bit about herself, and then we'll dive in.
Yay! I'm so happy to be here today. We've been wanting to do this for so long, and then what did we say the other day? Just fucking do it, right?
Yeah.
So you're gonna hear us fumble. You're gonna probably see kids coming out. We're gonna give hugs. We're going to just be moms because that's who we are. And I truly believe that as we go through our journeys through health and fitness, mindset is the biggest piece. And I think as moms, we have a lot of guilt, and we have a lot of preconceived notions about who we have to be and who we should be, and if we're being a good mom and what society tells us, like, are we check marking all the boxes? So one thing that I really strive to do is help moms and women in general, honestly, and even teenagers say, what can I do today to make myself feel great? And is that consistent, and can I be realistic with it? So, or is it realistic, and can I be consistent with it, more importantly? So I'm super excited to talk about this topic, because when you started talking to me about it the other day, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Like, it fits so well into everything that I preach. So I'm really excited to be here. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, let's talk. I just want to, before we dive in, I just want to talk about, so we think about like life and pillars of like, okay, exercise is a piece, nutrition is a piece, mindset is a piece. For context, like I dive into the nutrition and exercise piece pretty heavily, like I talk movement as medicine. But your venture, like would love to talk about it for a second about like everyday Erin, right? And you've talked about that's where it's kind of more the mindset piece, right? Like you said something that was so powerful that I think more people, we get so busy that we just forget. And it's like, you're like, I just want to be that person that when you get out of bed and you put your feet on the floor, like, I am happy today, and so, you've kind of gone on this venture of like everyday Erin. And I think that's just a special thing, is like, we can't always look at the long term. It's kind of like, what's today look like? And that's the everyday.
Yeah, yeah. And I think we spend a lot of time living in the future of like, oh, when I do this, what's your favorite saying? When I do this, I can do that, or when this
Yeah.
happens, I can do that, And I'm older than you, and I've spent many, many, many years of my life getting up, putting my feet on the ground and regretting and going, oh, gosh, my joints hurt, or, oh, I feel fluffy, or, oh, I don't want to weigh myself, or, gosh, all the decisions I made yesterday are really affecting me today. And I'm really tired of it. And I got tired of it. And I thought, how can I do this every single day where I get up out of bed, I put my feet on the floor, and I think, man, I made great choices yesterday, and I'm going to make great choices today. So the point of life is to have fun, to enjoy it, to do the things we love, and to feel great while we're doing it. So we don't have all this static in our head to be like, well, what should I be doing? And what haven't I done today? Right? Like, let's just do one thing and feel great about it. Make your bed.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
the one thing I do every single morning is make my bed. And
And
then I'm like, fuck yeah, I did it. I have succeeded already today, right? And then as we get consistent in that, we add a second thing, which is maybe I take my vitamins because I suck at taking vitamins, but I know
totally.
they're super important to me, right? So it's just those little things. It doesn't have to be these leaps and bounds and, oh, I lost 15 pounds in 1 month, because that isn't, I don't think that's the important piece. I think we want to a lot of times lose the weight to feel better about ourselves when there are things that we could just do to feel better about ourselves and then lose the weight. I think it's backwards.
Totally. Yeah. The when this, then that fallacy, right? Like when I lose 20 pounds, I'll be happier. It just doesn't exist because you lose the weight and then something else happens. Like as moms, right? Like your kid gets sick or like job situation. Like it's just life it's a living and breathing organism and it's always changing. And so it's like, right, it's like if we know that, then it's kind of we can pull ourselves back to today. And so it's like, how do I feel today? And then you alluded to like today I'm going to take my vitamins. So that's like the perfect segue into like this progressive overload that we're going to relate to the gym back to life. And how do we just take it one day at a time, right?
Yeah. 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 I'm super stoked about it because I have never thought about progressive overload in this way before, which is really kind of strange because, well, I've thought about it, but I haven't put that label on it.
Totally. Yeah.
But when we put that label on it, we can now take our venture into health and fitness and losing the 20 pounds and being like, wait a second, that correlates to everyday life with kids too. And then it starts making it more realistic because we can make it realistic in the gym and we can say, oh, we're going to increase by 10% every 2 weeks or every week. Easy, right?
Mhm.
Let's just do the same thing with life, but it's a different thing that we're progressive overloading in. And we're going to get into that.
No, totally. Yeah. I could talk about it forever, but
Yeah.
I'm a huge word person. So sometimes it's just like, you hear the same thing and it doesn't resonate, and then you hear it differently one time and you're like, oh. And so this is something I've been thinking a lot about lately. And then when I thought about it, I was like, why have I not heard this sooner? Like, right. It's just that like transition of like, this makes so much sense. So,
Yeah.
okay, let me, since technology, let me try and share this, for someone to present. Again, you guys, this is like my first venture into podcast, so there's going to be a lot of unedits here as I figure it all out. So,
And we're going to share our screen so you can see data or you can see graphics too. So if you're just listening to this, just know that this is what we're doing is we're just, we're going to do this.
okay, now we should see the screen and us. How am I doing?
You're doing fantastic.
Okay. So, as we talked about progressive overload, the theme is, when to push back and when to pull forward. So, again, it's the same when we're in the gym, right? It's kind of like when you're trying to build muscle, it's like pretty straightforward. Like we're going to use the 100-pound metric because it's just easier to wrap our heads around. So it's like, let's say 100 pounds is the heaviest that I can possibly lift. There's certain protocol in the gym that we follow to be able to lift 105 pounds. It's very straightforward. In life, it's a little bit messier and we lose sight of that. And so it's not so straightforward. So we're going to go back to that 100-pound to 105, 110-pound metric a lot as we translate this. So again, the theme, when to pull back and when to push forward. So I just wanted to start the conversation off of like, I use graphics as a helpful talking point. So hopefully it's helpful to you guys when you see and you're like, oh yeah, but when is life hard for you, right? So here, like Bodhi broke his leg a few months ago. I broke my leg or my foot the year before. And so that would warrant like life feels harder for me right now. Job, money, it's like that looming thing of like once you have more, all of a sudden your car breaks down and then you have less again, right? So it's like we go in these seasons. So I'd be curious to know like, some examples for you, Erin, where like maybe life feels harder for you.
Yeah. I think life feels more difficult for me when the emotional piece gets deeper. right? So 3 teenage girls, almost 17, turning 15 in a few weeks, and 13 years old. There's lots of hormones in my house. There's lots of attitude. There's lots of beauty. And when life gets so hard for me is when I can't fix, or when I know I shouldn't fix issues for them, right? There are things that they have to go through, but it weighs on me because I'm like, man, I wish I could just make it easier. And I think the difference between where you're at with Bodhi and where I'm at with the girls is that you can make things better for Bodhi, right? Band-aids fix a lot of things, and so do little ice packs and that kind of stuff. When we're talking about emotional things that get tough, Band-aids don't really work anymore. And neither
Yeah.
do ice packs, right? And so that's when we really learn how to communicate, and trust comes into the picture of, you can always trust me. I will never get mad. I don't get mad unless Kailani doesn't empty the dishwasher, which she did. I want you to know. She's standing right here. But that's when life really gets hard for me, because I don't necessarily know how to fix things, and I know that I shouldn't fix things a lot of times. So hard for me is that, and it weighs me down, and I struggle at those times, and I think, well, shit, I need to spend more time with them, so my workout wanes, or oh, we're gonna go get ice cream. And then it's like, wait a second, I'm rewarding sadness with food, and then I'm emotionally eating and all that other stuff, right? So then there's that big realm that comes in. It's like, how do we do this without rewarding with certain things that we know are coping mechanisms? So that's when life gets hard for me.
Yeah. And again, this is why it's so beautiful. I think just talking to you about this is like we have different perspectives on this. And so for all of you guys listening, it's just like I mean, my mind didn't even go there really, right? Because it's like when, Bodhi, like right now, he's like falling on the pillow, and then he'll hit his head, and then he'll look at me and just be like, I need a band-aid. And he'll get up and go get a band-aid. And then all of a sudden you put the band-aid on his head and he's better.
Yep. Yep.
So that it feels hard for me because it's like, okay, here we go. And it takes away from what we're doing to like, deal with this thing. But it's like, it's very straightforward, where it's like also just for those of you listening, I mean, 3 teenage girls in one house, like, I don't know how you do it. So
Well, one day at a time, lots of conversations. I started talking to them when they were little about everything.
yeah,
So
yeah.
we talked about penises and vaginas and periods and boys and all sorts of stuff. So nothing is taboo for us right now. And some people come into my house and they're like, holy cow, you talk about that in
Yeah.
that? Yeah, we talk about everything. So my one advice or one piece of advice for anyone is just talk to your kids. So that way they feel more comfortable talking to you at any stage of their life about anything, because it's never been shunned. And
Totally.
just, it might be uncomfortable for you to talk about penises and vaginas, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean
Talk about it.
it's a whole new ball game, because it's like for you, your life could be going beautifully well, but then you have 3 girls where it's like even just if one of them has this hardship, it's immediately like it could put you into a season of hard, right?
Yep.
So it's like this never ending thing. Like even when life is good, we have bad moments. Even when life is really hard, we have good moments. So
Yep. Yep.
that this is, that would be hard, right? But then there's some other things that warrant like, when does life feel easy? And maybe we lean into that more, and so for me, like, I live 25 hours away from family. You came to visit like I think 2 weeks ago, right? So it's like when you have that help, calling you family, right? Like you came and helped, and then right after you left, my mom was here, and it was like, man, that the last 2 weeks felt really easy because I actually had help with Bodhi, and me and Jack don't normally. And so that, if I could say that, like, I'm in a season of hard right now, but that time felt tremendously easier. And I was able to get a lot more done, so I progressively overloaded a little bit faster. Like it took off bandwidth where I'm like, I'm going to start a podcast now.
Why not? Yeah, yeah. No, and life for me gets easy. I don't know, this is gonna sound really bad, but I'm a single mom half time. And so I have my girls every week, Friday to Friday, and then they go, or every other week, Friday to Friday, and then they go to their dad's house. My easy weeks are when they're not here.
Totally.
Which used to be really hard for me when they were younger and we did this. It was really hard for me because I missed them. But now it's just like I've come into my own. I'm mom, I'm Erin when they're here, and now I'm Erin when they're not here. Okay. Bye, I love you. Sorry, they're leaving for school. So that's when it gets really easy for me, is because I've been able to like separate and really like compartmentalize who I am as a mom, but then who I am as Erin too. And that's the beauty of kids getting older too. They're self-sufficient. They're leaving for school on their own. I'm like, yeah, get out. See you next week. But still loving them all the same, right? So that's when life gets easy for me, is when I only have to deal with myself and Bonnie, my dog,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah, no, and it's again, this is where like the blend of like how we're talking is so relatable to people, because it's like that's very like if I was going through that right now, or like even like when I go ride my bike for 2 hours and I'm away from Bodhi, it's like that was, the 0 to 2 mark postpartum for me. That was really hard. And now it's like I go ride and it's easy. It's like, okay, he'll be fine, I can come back to him and stuff. And so that's like, with a lot of the people that I work with, that's what I talk about most, is like, you can go do those things for an hour or two and come back and your kid's going to be fine. But when it's a new stimulus, it is hard. Right. And as you grow, like, I mean, we have our kids, I mean, it's like a 15-year age gap between the kids. And so you're like, I can sit here and say what's easy and hard for me. And it's like, you've had 15 years go by and that time for you. And it's like, you're still saying situations that are hard. Right. So it's like,
Yeah.
again, like it never stops.
No, it just changes, right? And it's how we react. I always say there's two things we have control over, is the reaction we have to a situation, or yeah, our reaction, and then that action towards that reaction in that situation, right? So if those are the only two things we control, but life gets pretty easy, right?
Totally.
Controlling those, getting to that point is really, really difficult sometimes, because it's like, I'm a very, very reactive Taurus, and shit goes south really quick with me. But I've learned to pull back and be like, woo, okay, wait, what is my reaction to this? And I've learned that it's okay to take a step back, and tell my girls as they've gotten older, I will always love you, but I don't like your actions towards me. I don't love your actions towards me right now. I need to take a break,
Yeah.
and we will come back to this, right?
Yeah.
Whereas with Bodhi, it's really hard to be like, we're gonna take a time out. He's like, whatever, mom.
Yeah. Like, why'd you leave me? Like separation, right?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I will go to the next slide really quickly. But here's Bodhi just, he's smiling here, but it started with like he's just in a stage of clumsy and he was like tripping on everything. And then it's just like every time this happens, I immediately sit down and go to his level. And then it's crazy how you see that turn around real quick. But again, we're dealing with a 2.5-year-old that it's like it's very direct. And often it's just that they need you. And so, there's things that I want to do. And so like, these are kind of more thought-provoking questions over here. The first one being like, what happens when you're just in a season of hard, right? Or when life feels unpredictable, like when Bodhi broke his leg. Like there are things that pop up that like it makes it become a season. So when you have goals of like, I want to lose weight, or I want to, I want to run my first half marathon or whatever it is, or like, you have body composition goals, or, there's just different things. Like, how do you, as a coach, right? You hear people all the time, like, oh, I'm going on vacation and then I come back and then kids start school and then I have this. And then it's like, I'll start when I get back. Right. But it's like, that's not how that works, because perpetually like seasons, like it's always going to be hard. And
Yeah.
so I'm going to fast forward into this next slide about like progressive overload. And it's like, if we know that life's going to always be hard, the reason that it prevents people from starting is all or nothing mindset. Like, I need to have life be in a season of easy before I can put myself first, when that's not the case at all. Like, you should actually be doing that when life feels the hardest, because inevitably when life gets hard again, you're going to see results. And so we're going to talk about what that actually looks like to make it feel more realistic than this all or nothing. Like it's not like you want to lose weight and all of a sudden, like with the snap of a finger, you're tracking calories every single meal, you're weighing everything, you're doing it 7 days a week, you're going to the gym 5 to 6 times a week. Like like I've been doing this for a decade and that feels overwhelming to me. Right. And so when we
Yeah.
take a step back, it's like, what does progressive overload actually look like in your season of hard to see results? Because that's the sweet spot, because life's it's always going to be hard, even when it's good. Right.
Yep.
And so if I move, and as I say this, my kid looks like he's starting to wake up. Um, So some lingo that you guys should know, if you guys have been following me for a while or just even, in the health and fitness industry, it's like progressive overload in the gym. Right. And so that's where we're creating a stimulus to help us build muscle. And that's essentially progressive overload. RPE, rate of perceived exertion. So we talk about like if you're going to lift, that day it might be like a 6 to 7 on a scale of 10 effort. So your rate of perceived exertion is that. Reps in reserve is like if I say you're going to do this lift until you have two reps in reserve or 2 reps left in the tank. And so that's kind of like we're pushing failure, but we still have wiggle room. A lot of times it's like as motherhood, right? It's like we don't give ourselves reps in reserve. We just fucking go for it.
Yep.
And so it's kind of that like when life is hard, again, I'm going to get into it, but when life is harder, like let's say I can go to the gym and lift 100 pounds, right? 1 week, that might mean that my rate of perceived exertion is like a 6 or 7. That 100 pounds felt easy. The next week, I might, be sick or my kid's sick. I didn't sleep great. I go to the gym and lifting 100 pounds, my rate of perceived exertion might be a 9. Like it took everything to get to the gym, right? And so it's like the weight was exactly the same, but how the effort is what changes. And so in life, it's very straightforward in the gym, right? Like I could not possibly have lifted more than 100 pounds because I'm physically just not there. But then in life, it's like we're like when we're in a state of hard or a season of hard, our perceived exertion is like 10 all the time. And we don't know how to dial it back to meet ourselves at that like 60 to 70% effort. It's like, it's funny how like when you have weight over your shoulder, like it's very straightforward, but then in life, it's like, I'm just, keep throwing it on. I'm going to lift it all. Right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and so I want to go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to go to the next slide and just kind of be like, let's take this and what we know about progressive overload and rate of perceived exertion in the gym, and then let's kind of pull this back and relate it to life.
Yeah. So one thing on this slide is that for me, it's really difficult when I'm in the gym. It's like, okay, we're going to do this at 70% of your max, right? Or whatever the case is. There are times when, because you rate your workout at the end of it on a scale of 1 to 10, what was it, right? It's so like gray to me. I'm like, I don't know. Like, was it a 7? Could I have gone harder? Like during it, I'm like, yeah, I cannot get that last one out. But then I question myself at the end of it and go, well, could I have done more? So this is really interesting. I think my point to that is that it's not straightforward and there's not a right answer to this as far as like, what is my perceived exertion? I think as moms, we never say that was a 10, right? Because there's probably always been things that were harder, right? And so it's like, well, yeah, I made it through because that's what I do. Do I have reps in reserve? Of course I have reps in reserve, because when shit gets hard and I have to get stuff done, I'm going to get shit done. That's just who we are. As women, that's just who we are, right? So just be gentle with yourself when we're thinking about perceived exertion in life and reps in reserve, because we will push ourselves and push ourselves and push ourselves probably over the point of like, we'll go into the negative when it comes to reps in reserve, right? We will not have any reps in reserve and we'll just be like, we're getting shit done. And that's when life gets too much. And not that life gets too much, but that's when we need to pull back and be like, wait a second, where do we ask for help? How do we make our lives more realistic? Maybe we've got too many kids and too many sports.
Yeah.
Right? Like they get older, they're in sports, we're going because they deserve that. And we didn't get that as kids and all this other stuff. But then all of a sudden we're tapped out and we're in negatives.
Yeah.
And we're struggling because we think our kids need that. Guess what? Your kids are going to do these sports today. They ain't going to the pros.
Yeah.
The majority of kids are not going to pros. You're putting in a lot of energy and they might not even like it. Right.
Yeah.
And this might ruffle some feathers with people, but that's okay. I'm not here to be everybody's friend, but I do believe that we push ourselves way too hard in the idea that my kid is going to benefit so much from this, when in reality, they don't.
Half
right?
the
They
time,
would
all I want is
benefit.
just the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say they'd benefit more from quality time with you than time on the field, getting pushed and pushed and pushed, right? Is teamwork great? Do you need to learn sports? Absolutely. But when it comes down to it, when I think of my life, I think, man, if I just had more time each day with my mom and she was present with me,
Yeah.
man, that's what I want. And when I parent my girls, that's where I go, is what do they need right now? And you kind of said something about that picture in the previous slide where Bodie had stumbled, hit his head, whatever, and you're like, I'm sitting down and I'm asking him right now, like what he needs, how can I help you, right? I read something many years ago that was like, when you get frustrated with a situation with your kids, right? So my kids used to do that all the time. Like they'd be just run into a wall and I'd be like, oh my God, how annoying is that, right? And I found myself getting really frustrated with them over silly things like that. And I read this article and it's like, when you get frustrated with something like that, think back to your childhood and think, why are you frustrated with that? What happened when you were a kid, when you got hurt, and what did you really need? And what I really need is, or needed, was my mom to just stop,
Yeah.
sit there with me for 2 minutes. Two
Yeah.
minutes in the grand scheme of thing is nothing, right? Get me a fucking band-aid, tell me you love me, hold me for a minute, and then I'm good,
Yeah.
right? And I think it's still that way with me. Like there are times when I will go up to my girls and I'll say, I need a hug.
Totally.
And they'll be like, okay. So I've learned that if I just drop into the moment, and this is all about reps in reserve, right? Drop into the moment, get your bucket filled, get some more reps in reserve, and then we can continue on.
Yeah.
Then we're not stressed and then we're not frustrated at a situation that really goes back to our childhood, which is I didn't get my needs met as a kid, more than likely. And now that's coming into my life today because I'm still not getting my needs met. And
Yep.
sometimes we have to meet our own needs. We can't rely on anybody else to do it.
Yeah, like that's the thing, right? Like again, going back to like a 2-year-old is very straightforward. And so it's like when he falls or hurts himself, it's like I get down on his level and it's like I literally ask him, do you need a hug or do you want to dust it off? Right. And so we've started that on the bike because he would fall a
Yeah.
lot. It was like, it's like, mommy need a hug. Right. And it's like, okay, you're getting a hug. Right. Or if it's like, dust it off is like to him is like he knows that he's okay. Like it's like he just needed a minute and then he'll literally dust it off and then go on. And it's like, when our kids are injured, we drop everything for them to figure out what's going on. But then it's like, an injury doesn't just come from like a physical standpoint, but also mental. Like when we're like emotionally just having a hard day, like it literally can take 2 seconds to take a deep breath and check in with ourselves and ask ourselves, what do we need to do today? What do we need? And it's like, why is it so easy to do that for our kids? But like it's like when it comes to us, it's just like dust it under the rag. It's like I don't actually need anything right now, and you just keep trucking along, and we get to the negative reps in reserve, right?
Yeah.
It's funny how that like we just sometimes need to check in with ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, so Erin, are you good on time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So again, I'm just going to use this analogy of like with progressive overload. So it's kind of like we have our workout recovery cycle, right? So here's our stimulus, we're lifting weights. For those of you to build muscle, you're breaking muscle down to build it, right? And so we have this as like we're training, generally that's like there's this muscle fatigue and recovery, and then the super compensation is like when we actually see the results. And so you have to like break down that muscle to build more muscle. And so even in progressive overload, it's not like I go to the gym, see results, see results, see results. It's in that cycle, we still see that dip, to over like the super compensation is where the growth happens. And so I think this is a really good graph to recognize like progressive overload doesn't mean like I'm just going straight up. It's the same thing with weight loss. It's not like here's my weight, here's my weight, here's my weight. Like we see it go up before we go down quite frequently. And then when you take this and then you zoom out, see every time we see that dip, but it's that curve up, right? And so you have your performance over here, you have time, and then you keep progressive overloading. That's how we go up, right? Like in life, a lot of times it's like you decide you want to do something and you think that it's just going to be like this rocket ship up, right? And it's the same thing with weight loss. Like progress is not linear ever. But if we give ourselves actions to support that, we're still gonna start to see results in the direction that we want, right? And so moving forward, I don't know why it keeps freezing. This table over here is kind of like, this is where we're going to get into the meat of it. I know you guys are like, okay, we've been talking about progressive overload, but like, what does that actually mean? Like, you can tell me to take a back seat and rest in life, but when life is hard, it's like nobody actually does. So we're going to use this analysis and make it more realistic. And like, maybe it is enough to give you that switch in your head to be like, oh, this is where I'm actually at. So, what I mean by that is, let's say week 1, we go to the gym, we lift 100 pounds, we do it 10 times and we do that for 4 sets, right? So it's very straightforward. Like, this is what I'm doing to build muscle. Week 2, maybe life feels really hard. And so we did the exact same thing, right? I would argue that if you went from doing nothing to going to the gym twice, even though this is exactly the same, it's still progressive overload in relation to life. Like, we are still adding a training stimulus that we did not have before, right? And so, there's people in the fitness world that'll be like, no, that's not progressive overload because your weight sets and reps are exactly the same. But really, if that's more than you've been doing, especially, in motherhood, or this is a new stimulus for you, it's 100% progressive overload. And we need to remind ourselves of that. And then that, let's say, okay, we go into week 3 of the same lift, and our reps and sets are exactly the same. And the only thing that changes is we were able to add a little bit of weight, right? And so we piecemeal this. The 4th week we go into it, the weight's exactly the same again. Like, because 110 is so heavy, I can't possibly lift more. I'm going to do 110 again. This time, I'm just going to add 1 or 2 more reps to it. That's progressive overload. Again, progressive overload isn't like you go from 100 pounds to 150 to 200. It's like small increments. When you first start lifting, you see this really quick spike, and you can lift 25-pound dumbbells to all of a sudden you're in a barbell. Like, it goes quick, but as you progress in your journey, like, there's small increments to see improvement. And so this is where we can dive into it, Erin, but it's like, I didn't put the words here, but it's like we have our weight, our reps, and our sets. And so in the gym, it makes sense, right? 1 week I'm adjusting weights, the next week I'm adjusting reps, the next week I'm adjusting sets. So in life, maybe we bucket these categories as like, one of them is nutrition, one of them is our workouts, and one of them is like, I don't know, mindset or other things, right? And so a lot of you, it's like, if we want to lose 20 pounds, let's say, it's like, okay, I'm going to snap my fingers and all of a sudden I'm going to be able to go to the gym 5 days a week. I'm going to track everything, every meal, weigh everything 7 days a week, and I'm also going to go to bed early. I'm going to wake up early and have a morning routine. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, if you go to the gym, you're not all of a sudden able to lift 500 pounds, right? It's like, we need to start small. And so for whatever reason in life, why is it that we all of a sudden are like, I'm going to do all of the things, right? That's all or nothing mindset. And so now we need to take this concept in the gym and relate that to life. You talked about how, today, like, I've done this really well, and now I'm going to add my vitamins and I'm going to remember.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the simple progressive overload. It's one thing at a time, right?
Yeah. So it could be as easy like habits, right? Week 1, you're going to do 1 new habit, right? Week 2, you're still going to do 1 new habit. Week 3, we might add in that second one, right? Or the third one, whatever the case is. I think consistency in itself is progressive overload.
Totally.
Right. So you're speaking of, you go to the gym on week 1, you do 100 pounds, 10 reps for 4 sets. The second week you do the same thing. Your progressive overload is the consistency in that of doing it. Right. So habits can be something as simple as making your bed, drinking your water. The 3 things that you might put in instead of reps, sets, and weight is habits, protein, and movement, or number of steps, right? Number of steps might be 10 to 12,000, and they might stay consistent at 10 to 12,000. You don't have to progressively overload on that. The consistency of getting 10 to 12,000 steps per day is your progressive overload, because there's going to be days that you don't get it. And that's okay, right? Even if we say an average of 10 to 12,000 over the course of a week, that's cool. When we're looking at protein, you know how bad I am at eating protein, because it's just like choking down bird. Just and for anybody who knows Chandler, I hear her in my voice or in my head every single day. She's like, eat your protein first, Erin, so you can have the pancake, or so you can have the rice cake with chocolate chips on it. I'm a chocolate fiend. I won't give it up. But what I have tended to do in the past is not eat my protein. I know protein's super important to me. So for me, the things that I've really tried to implement is making my bed every morning. I used to do it. I get up at 4:15 every morning. It's non-negotiable for me unless I negotiate with myself the night before. I never negotiate at 4:15 in the morning with myself, because that's tired Erin, and future Erin will not be happy with current Erin if I do that. So I get up at 4:15, I make my bed. Man, I have won the day if that's the case, right? I always get my 10 to 12,000 steps. And what I'm really working on now is my vitamins. So that's my progressive overload, because I know I feel better when I do that. But then I am also working on my protein.
Yeah.
So at every meal, what protein am I getting? And I'm eating it first. And then I'm saying, yes, now I can have the pancake. Part of that for me is because I come from a background of disordered eating. I was never bulimic, never anorexic. I did a ton of emotional eating. It's a coping mechanism for me. Thankfully, my scale got melted on my toaster oven last week, and so it quit working. And I didn't really know it. I kept thinking, like, when I was using my collagen in the morning, I'm like, damn, I'm going through this stuff really, really fast. Well, it wasn't weighing it correctly. And I happened to turn it over one day, and the entire back is like melted on it. And so I had to toss my scale, and I just bought another one yesterday. But in hindsight, it's really been good for me, because I can't weigh anything. And for me, weighing things is a crutch. Tracking them in my fitness pal is a crutch, because I think two things. Ah, shit, I went over. Fuck it. I'm just going to eat the X, Y, and Z. Or I think, ooh, I have 500 calories left.
Yeah.
Where is that, right? So I have forced myself, and disordered eating is really, really common in a lot of people. A lot of people don't recognize that they do it though,
Mhm.
right? And so what it's forced me to do is step back and go, eat when you're hungry. And I've been to nutritionists when I was doing my disordered eating, and they said, just eat mindfully. Ah, come on, bitch, I'm eating mindfully. I am knowing exactly what I'm eating at all the time. I know it makes me feel good, right? So I wasn't in that right space. But now this is super important to me, because I'm tired at 47 years old. I'm tired of waking up in the morning and not feeling great about my choices. I've been through a lot of coaches. I've been through the weight loss. I've been through the body composition change, all that stuff. And what I've always missed is trusting myself and really paying attention to my body, and doing progressive overload in life the right way.
Yeah.
You can't do it all at once, because it's not realistic.
Yeah.
So choose one or two things that you're like, these are easy and they can make me feel good.
Yeah.
And then just do them,
Yeah.
right? And then when you feel great about that, as our confidence raises and we're like, yeah, I'm kicking ass at life, add something else in. And that something else might be, I'm going to go and I'm going to lift 4 times at the gym.
Yeah.
Then we can start like putting in these little pieces of, how are we going to get to our realistic goals? How are we going to lose the weight? How are we going to change the body composition, increase our endurance, that kind of stuff. But I think it really comes at mindset first, and understanding why it's important to you.
Yeah. You said two things that really stuck out, and I'm going to share one really quickly. And that's just a lot of you listening, I'm sure, the weight loss goals, right? So when we talk about weight loss or progressive overload with weight loss, here's just a very quick example. Is, let's say, okay, so 1 pound of fat is 3,500 calories, right? So if you divide that by 7, it's being in a deficit of 500 calories a day. That's it, 500 calories. So when you see all these fancy macro calculators, whatever, they're literally just putting you in roughly 500 calorie deficit to help you with a pound of fat loss per week. Okay. So again, when you talked about tracking as a crutch. So again, we're not robots, but then these calorie trackers, it's like the same every day. They expect you to eat, right? And so really, all we really need to do is we need to eat in a slight deficit, right? And so that's maybe eating 80% of what we normally do. So instead of trying to get all elaborate and getting these fancy recipes, tracking every single thing, it's like start with one meal. And so just you can internally think this, like when do I snack a lot or when do I eat the most? And for most people, it's they snack a lot at the 3 to 4 window before dinner, or their dinners are huge and they go together, right? Because it's like you snack, you're not satiated, and then you overeat at dinner, right? So maybe I'm not even going to track or change my snacking habit. Like let's keep all of this the same, and then we get to dinner because we eat dinner high, and you eat pasta with some meat. The only task that you're going to do is fill your plate with 80% of the pasta you normally would. That's the only thing when I have you change. It's not tracking calories for every meal. It's not making sure your protein is, spot on for every meal. It's like, if you want to lose weight, we know we need to be in a deficit. Let's think about all of the things that you like to eat and you normally eat. I can't change everything all at once, because as soon as you try to get all these recipes and track everything, you're trying to change everything. It's too much. So we're going to do our day exactly how it should be. We're going to get to dinner and we're going to fill our plate with 80% of what we normally eat. And that's how we progressive overload nutrition when we're just getting started to lose weight, right? It's one thing. When we do that really well, now it's like, okay, can I make my snack before dinner better so I'm not as hungry for dinner? And that's the next habit, right? So that would be an example of progressive overload in that way, right? Does that
Yep.
make sense?
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I think going into it really, like if we're talking about nutrition specifically, is really look at nutrition and go, where are my perceived barriers? I hear it a ton. Oh my gosh, I don't want to prep foods. Then don't, or prep meals, right? I think we have this notion in our head, because this is what society shows us, is we buy the glass containers with the snap lids and we have them out on our counter and we've got them each portioned out. And then our refrigerator is so beautiful, and my refrigerator is not beautiful. It is dirty and from kids and juice and everything like that. But that overwhelmed me, right? And so I was like, no, I hate prepping meals. Well, what I learned was that I don't necessarily have to prep my meals, but if I simply prep my proteins, it really helps me. Oh, hi, Bodie. It really helps me be able to go into each meal and say, what's my protein?
Right.
Right. So that's the easy part for me, is like, I've got mounds of meat in my refrigerator. I've got a ton of garnishments, right? So relish, pickles, jalapenos, pickled onions, whatever the case is, to make it good. Sometimes I just put meat in a bowl, or I eat salmon out of a can. If anybody follows me, I eat salmon out of a can because it's easy and I'm getting my damn protein in, because I have Chandler on my shoulder going, just eat your protein, Erin, and then you can have the pancake. So I do. But sometimes it's just as easy as that. Find one thing that you can do. And honestly, that helps your family too. If you've got mounds of meat in your refrigerator, let's assume you're not vegan or vegetarian, but if you have mounds of meat in your refrigerator that you can easily give your kids, right? So Bodie gets eggs, he gets meat, he gets bacon, he gets all those things. If it's easy to give them to him and help him eat his protein first too, right? So it doesn't have to be what you see on social media.
Yeah, I think the confusion is like in the diet industry, right? There's all these fad diets. I think we've kind of broken through the noise through that a little bit, where it's like, it doesn't matter what your fad diet that you want to, whatever, it's calorie deficit,
Yep.
right? But where you see a lot of there is no one size fits all, right? And so I think a lot of coaches, it's like, here's your calories and macros. I'll see you, in a month. And if you hit it, great. Like, but it's like, the barrier there is like, yeah, that's great, but each person, the way they live their life or have different stressors, like you have 3 girls that are teenagers, I have a 2.5-year-old, how we live our life is going to be drastically different. So that's great to have a metric of like calories and macros, but like maybe your barriers to tracking or doing that are going to be different than mine. And so it's like the coach needs to be able to choose one thing with that person to work on to start to see progressive overload. And I think that's where we get stuck with coaches is it's just kind of like, okay, here's your calories and macros and here's your workout and we'll see you in a month. And that's just not how it goes. Like the sweet spot is really understanding like, okay, here's client A, here's client B, here's client C. We're going to figure out one way to progressive overload with each of them. And that's going to look very different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we have to take our families into consideration too, right? So with teenage girls, what I was really concerned about, because I come from disordered eating, was, am I going to teach them the wrong thing about food?
Right.
And so and some people have teenagers who have bulimia or anorexia, and they're like, I'm struggling with that, Erin, because the last thing I want to do is now exacerbate that because I'm wanting to lose weight. So
Right.
it's like, cool, let's do this, but let's make it healthy for
Yeah.
everyone involved, right? So then that's when education of what is a protein, what is a carb, what is a fat, how do our bodies use them, what do we need to get first, second, third, or fourth, what's processed, so we go into the education of it. So now we understand why, and our kids understand why it's important to do this. My girls laugh all the time because they're just like, protein, protein, protein. Like literally, I say it all the time. They're like, can we have this? I let my kids eat anything, but I always say, have you eaten your protein? Or tell me what you've had for protein. And at 15, 13, or 17, 15, and 13, they can tell me what protein is now. And I'm like, okay, cool. You did it. I'm glad. And kids change taste buds every hour, right? I'm sure Bodie ate something last week that this week he's like, that's, yeah, no, thank you.
All
So
the time.
yeah. So being able to have our families be part of this with us and not be so outside of what they're doing is super important too, because again, this is a lifestyle. We aren't on a diet. We aren't doing this for fast weight loss. We didn't get here where we're at quickly. We're not going to reverse it quickly either. And so, but we're going to reverse it the right way. So progressive overload is in all those things, right? It's progressive overload is in the education.
Totally. Yeah, you hit on something that I think a lot of people struggle with, or at least in the calls that I've had, is like when you set calorie tracking as the main goal to lose weight, it can really impact like families, like because like, oh, my husband doesn't eat like this, or my partner or my kids don't like this, and it's like, how can I possibly weigh and track pasta and like, but it's like we talked about like the education, right? And so it's like, calorie tracking, of course, like what gets measured gets managed can help. It's a fantastic tool. But like the skill of learning 80% fullness, so like I'm putting 80% on my plate instead of 100% of what I normally do, or making sure I have protein, you're now teaching your kids that skill.
Yeah.
You're helping them progressive overload their life, right? So as they do leave your house, and they move on with their lives, like they're like, oh, remember when mom didn't shut up about protein? It's just like that doesn't leave. And so it's like it's progressive overload is like you can do that with your mind, right? Like we go lift weights and we build muscle in our body physically, but like you can build that muscle in our brain for how we learn these things, right? That's how like over time we see that change happen. And so like set it,
Yeah.
get it, right? Like so the more you prioritize protein as a progressive overload habit, eventually that's just second nature. Like you've established that baseline of muscle of that, right?
Yeah. Here's the super, super cool thing. I love the brain. I love psychology. Really wish I kind of went into that or double majored in that when I was in school. But there's a portion of our brain that's responsible for willpower. And
Yeah.
they've figured out that that portion of your brain can be strengthened. So some people are born with really, really strong willpower. And that's why you see some people who are just super black and white. I don't really care. I'm not emotional about it. I'm going to go in. Men are a lot like this, right? Where they're just like, bang, they don't do emotional eating. Most men don't. Some do, but they have a very strong portion of their brain that's important for, or that's, what do I want to say? That's in charge of willpower. What they've learned is that with consistency and delayed gratification, this part of the brain can increase and be strengthened pretty quickly.
Mm.
So when we're going through progressive overload, and we're doing these mental things, we really are gaining muscle and we are really strengthening that piece of our brain that is going to help us with the willpower and the consistency and hitting our goals down the road. We have to be able to delay that gratification though, because we are so quick. And the portion of your brain that's responsible for those immediate responses and the immediate like dopamine rush and that kind of stuff, you have to be able to sit back, and it's even like 2 minutes or something like that. It's a very, very short amount of time. If you can step away from a situation for 2 to 3 minutes and allow that to pass through your prefrontal cortex and get to the part of the brain that actually gives you the rationale and the reasoning behind a situation and the reaction, it's great. And every time we're able to do that, we strengthen that piece of the brain that is responsible for that willpower. So don't think that this is all just emotional and hokey pokey and all that kind of stuff. We're actually strengthening our brain and that neurological pathway, and our brains and our actions will take the path of least resistance every single time. So it's going to take a little bit to actually create that new neurological pathway, but guess what? It's going to be stronger, and it happens pretty quickly too. It's going to be stronger as we do that. And then pretty soon it's like, yeah, dude, I'm a man and I can be black and white and I can, I don't want to be a man. I want to think like a man. But we can do that and we can be super black and white and we can be like, yeah, I used to have issues with this, but with consistency, discipline, delayed gratification, realistic expectations, I was able to do this. And man, I'm really happy that I did this for myself.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Like I mean, again, like for those of you that know me, I've struggled with like body image my whole life. And I've got, I mean, I don't anymore. But that, you know, when I was younger, if somebody would have told me that, I would have been like, you're crazy. Like, you know, but it's the consistent things that build up where it's like you can then look back and objectively say like, yeah, this doesn't affect me like it did, but you're strengthening those muscles in your brain, and that's through like progressive overload with that, right? Like, so that's really cool to hear you say it in that way. Like, my, you know, Alex might join us on this podcast at one
Yeah.
point. He talks about neuroplasticity a lot, and that's like literally you can rewire your brain, and choose a new outcome for the way you think about things in life. And so that's kind of like this, in the thought of we're progressively overloading a stimulus, with a new one, that's where neuroplasticity happens. And we talk about the brain. So that's a cool, we don't need to dive into that, but the
Yeah,
way that
we
you brought
will.
that is- yeah.
Yeah. And I think the basis for changing those patterns and changing those coping mechanisms all comes from understanding why this is important to you. Like deep down, why is it important? And then that's what really drives us every single day to put our feet on the ground and go, man, I feel great about this. Because yeah, losing weight is great, and having a body composition of 8% body fat or whatever you want, that's cool, but there's got to be a reason why you want that. Um, and the only way that we're going to be consistent and really put in the hard work when life gets into a season of hard is to be able to do that and adjust and say, wait, I know my goals. I know this is important to me, and they might look different right now, but that doesn't mean I can't get back to where I was, right? We don't have to get rid of everything. We might just have to get rid of one or two things. And it might be something that your family is doing. It might be something that you're doing, but don't always sacrifice yourself for that, because
Yeah.
it doesn't always benefit the family if you always sacrifice yourself.
Yeah, no, that's you said that so well. And now that I think about it, since you brought it up, but like talking about your why, I'm just gonna throw out this is where we're learning about the podcast. I'll throw out the freebie that I have, but I literally have a guide called Discovering Your Why. And it kind of walks you through those steps of like, you know, I think it's specifically important for like going into motherhood. We live our life a certain way and then we become moms, and then all of a sudden, like, it's like, what's our why again? And it's like, oh, I'm going to do everything for my kid. But like, we have an identity outside of being a mom, right? It's like, we are a mom. We can be a damn good one, but we can also be this damn good, whatever version of ourselves that we want. And so in all of this to say like, you know, when we think about progressive overload, it's like, why are we doing this? You know, what's the point? So, if you hear this and you're like, oh yeah, I'd love to like dive deeper into this, I'll have a link in the show notes to it, but it's the PDF. It's called Discovering Your Why, and it will kind of walk you through those steps because I think through anything, like if you don't have a why, and you're very good at this. So if you guys, Erin's better at it than me. Like I have the guide, but if you need help discovering your why, we'll have links in the show notes, but reach out to Erin and she'll ask you your why like 10 layers deep until you understand it. So
Yeah, yeah,
if you're listening and you're really struggling of like, I have this certain goal, I don't know where to go with it, you have resources now. So it's kind of like if you need help with kind of where to go with that, you can reach out to either of us. But I don't think we said this at the beginning of the podcast, but the mindset master, right? So
yeah.
two
Yeah.
of us
So
with like programming and nutrition and the mindset piece. It's yeah. So
yeah, I think it's really important. And what I've learned over the course of time with my girls getting older is that they're going to be out of the house pretty soon, right? And as I'm sitting here going, what is my why, which I did probably 3.5 years ago. Why am I doing this?
yeah.
I didn't know who I was. I had totally lost myself. And to be completely fair with myself and honest with myself, I don't know who I was before, I think. And so then I took on this identity of like, I'm mom. This is really easy. I'm mom of 3 girls under the age of 5. I just going diapers, all this other stuff, right? And then as they've progressed and they've gotten pretty self-sufficient, like they'll always need me. But my role as a mom has changed. They don't need me as much. And so I'm forced to, not forced, but I'm forcing myself to go and find myself truly, honestly, for probably the first time in my entire life. Right. And so that why becomes super important because 4 years, 5 years, my girls are going to be gone. Well, my youngest says she's always going to live with me, but I will leave if she wants to stay here. That's fine. I'll come back and visit, um, but but I have to be able to say this is who I am, and it's really important for my girls to see that too, because now they know that I have an identity. They know who I am. They know that I help people. They know that I'm really good at what I do, and it's really inspiring for them when they think about their why. And so you're not being selfish by doing this. You're really being a big help to yourself and your family. And I think that's what we need to tell parents more, and men too, right? But we need to tell moms more that this isn't selfish. You're really helping your entire family when you do this. So be grateful for the tools that Chandler has and the why PDF. I'm more than happy to help. Like she said, show notes will tell you how to get in touch with both of us. But yeah,
And Bodhi's going to tell you how to get in touch with him too.
I can't wait.
We kind of went over this. I feel like this might be, I know we've been chatting a lot. So people are either like, oh, tell me more. I love this. Or I've been listening long enough. I'm done.
Yeah, yeah.
We're gonna dive like there's just so much with this, and if this resonated at all, like there's more to come. But hopefully you guys feel like this was a great step into like reevaluating, like am I doing too much or too little, and kind of just make you really think about it, and am I in the sweet spot? If you are, like, you're winning.
Yeah.
But it just goes, there's so much to in life that we can apply this to. And we've touched on a lot of this, and it's just like postpartum, like how can I progressively overload? I have a new kid, like I can't lift 200 pounds right now. I'm gonna lift 5. Learning nutrition, right? And it's we're not going to track everything, every single meal right off the hop. We're going to, in one meal, we're going to eat 80% of it if our goal is weight loss. Trying a new skill, like sometimes we dive head first, and it's like that could be a good thing, but also like you have other things in life going on, and we got to find that balance. Running your first race, like it's do what I say, not do what I do, or what's the saying where it's like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have signed up for an ultra, but we here I am. I'm progressively overloading into that. It's life is always going to have seasons. And I think if we can just, if you take away one thing from this entire podcast, is just like, if you feel like you're in a season of hard and you're really struggling with the day to day, it's like, just choose one thing. Get really good at that one thing, and it should feel easy. I think, as a coach, you guys all have the tools, and I hear this a lot of people that object to working with a coach, which is fine. Like, I'm not going to convince people to do what they don't feel is right for them, but it's like, oh, I know what to do. I just got to do it. And it's like, yeah, everybody does. What a coach helps you do is really understand progressive overload in your own life. The reason that you keep failing is I go from working out 0 to thinking I need to work out 5 or 6 times a week. And a coach is going to be like, okay, this is where you're at in life. You're going to work out for 20 minutes twice a week, and we're going to build upon that. And a coach, all they really do is help you implement the things that you already know, but you've been struggling with it because you have this all or nothing thing. And so we're going to really help you identify how to meet yourself where you're at, because that constantly changes. And then we help you progressive overload, not just in the gym to build muscle, but in life, right? And that's really what a coach is. Like, you get results. We just help you understand how to do it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And everybody has a coach, right? You would never, even your kids have a coach. That's what their teachers are, right? So it's super beautiful. And this topic, like you've said, we could talk about it for a long time. And there's so many little things that you even just talked about that, psychological readiness to change scale, right? We have to be at a certain place in order to do this, but that's a whole nother podcast that we can talk about. So I have absolutely loved this. I love everything that we have brought into this discussion, because I think it's very important. So, and I'm glad Bodhi joined us as well.
Can you say hi, Bodhi? No, we're gonna be shy.
Oh, that's
It's
fine.
okay. Those
That's
of you listening, you didn't see him, and if those of you that are watching on Spotify, I have the video, so you can say hi to Bodhi and his messy hair. Thank you for being good and letting me talk. That was really good.
like, whatever. No, Bodhi is such a great kid. I can't wait to hug him next weekend.
Yeah, next weekend for the Ultra. Maybe we can do our next podcast as a recap after, because I won't be able to move for like a week.
We'll do it. But I really appreciated being on here, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so just really quick before you hop off, where can people find you?
They can find me on Instagram as Everyday Erin. I'm on Facebook as Erin Jennifer. We'll put everything in the show notes. And you can always find me through Chandler. If you know Chandler and you can get to her, then she'll get you in touch with me as well.
Awesome. Yeah, and Erin won't be a stranger, because hopefully you guys found as much value as I did, just in the everyday conversations that we have. So more to come on this. Everything will be linked in the show notes. And thanks you guys for listening in. And Erin, I really appreciate your time. Okay, Bodhi said stop talking. I think it's time. So
We'll
you've been
listen to you.
awesome. And
All
as
right.
always, I appreciate you.
Appreciate you too.
Hi, moms. Thanks for listening in to the Athlete Mom Project. I'm Chandler, here with Bodhi, and I'm here to help you discover your strength, set big goals, and thrive in every phase of motherhood. Remember, I'm here climbing this mountain with you too. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel on YouTube at With Chan You Can, and follow the Athlete Mom Project on Spotify for more episodes. You can also follow me on Instagram at With Chan You Can, and all links are in the description. And remember, with Chan, you can.